Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Baggage Claim Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. I'm your host, Dr. Danita, and I'm excited about tonight's episode of SMS Cures for Social Media Sickness. On the Baggage Claim Show, we seek to present relevant, everyday life topics that impact mental and emotional health in some way. And then we offer tips, we offer suggestions and remedies for wellness and wholeness. Social media sickness affects both the young and the old. There's loneliness, people experience isolation and anxiety and depression, and there's bullying on social media. It breeds social incompetence, all of the unrealistic friendship and relationship expectations, and then there's just so much more. This is a sickness that is spreading rampantly, and the Baggage Claim Show is here to address it. Before we go on live tonight, just take a moment to share, to like and share, and don't forget to head over to my YouTube channel at Dr. Danita Thompson and subscribe. Then don't forget to hit the notification bell. Are you ready? Let's go live. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Baggage Claim Unpack Your Bags with Dr. Danita. I'm so excited that you are joining us tonight. And as you come in, do what we do what you do. Go ahead and like and share. Please give us some hearts and some thumbs up. If you are a fan, let us know that you're a fan. Just type in the feed that you're a fan. If this is your first time joining, let us know where you're joining from. And if you're catching the replay, just type in hashtag replay. And so again, we're excited that you've joined us on tonight. This is the final episode of season 4, and I'm going to invite my guest in a few minutes, in a minute or so. But I just wanted to share that during this season, we have been talking about social media and social media's impact on our emotional health. And so we have a great topic on tonight that we're going to talk about, hashtag traumatized. And so we do know that social media has some positive, positive things about social media. It was created to keep people connected, provide education, and some positive things. But we also know that social media has become quite addictive and has had some very negative impacts on people's emotional selves. And so we're going to start our show on tonight by introducing our guests. We have Kiara, who joined us in the studio on tonight. And so we're excited about that. Kiara is a repeating panelist. And so thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kiara. And we have Whitney, who has joined us. Whitney is a member of our baggage claim team.
Hello, everyone.
And then we also have Valerie. Valerie is one of our counseling professionals on the team here at Mending Hearts. Thank you so much for joining me on tonight.
So thank you. I'm happy to be here and I'm honored to be here. So thank you for having me. I'm excited about our topic for tonight.
All right. And Valerie, before I forget, at the end of the show, let everybody know what you do, just in case I don't forget. When I say you want to have last words, tell everybody to join you for your show as well, okay?
Okay. All right.
All right. All right. So tonight we are talking, again, the title is hashtag traumatized. If you're joining us, please let us know where you're joining us from. Again, let us know that you're a fan if you are back from previous shows. And I'm going to do my best to monitor the feed. We want a lot of interaction. We want you to stay in communication with us. And so I see Stephanie Hodges, Joe has joined us. Thank you so much. And Mary Benton. Hey, Mary, it's good to see you, or good to see you on live. And Sandra Wiley and Kevin, thanks for joining us on tonight. So we know that we have experienced some very, very disturbing headlines in social media, and that's nothing new. It's nothing
Yeah.
new that we, see these disturbing headlines. But statistics is saying, the Pew Report has indicated that 86% of Americans get their news from social media.
Wow.
And so, with these ongoing disturbing headlines and 86% of Americans getting their news from social media, that's a problem, right? And so, the overexposure that people experience can, like the overexposure. So, we were in a pandemic. There's school shootings. There's race riots and the brutality of Black and brown people, the
Yeah.
insurrection at the Capitol, all of these things. And when they happen, it's just over and over and over and over again. And the feed just never stops
Mm.
with this information. And so not only do you get good information from social media, but you also are subjected to misinformation.
Yeah.
And so let's talk first about, before we go into some of the negative impact of social media, let's talk a little bit about how social media has served in a positive way as it relates to finding out about crisis or finding out about tragedy. And anybody can jump in.
Yeah. I think one positive aspect is the fact that information can be disseminated so quickly and
Mm-hmm.
over such a wide range um, of people can
A
find
wide
out.
reach, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
has a far
Mm-hmm.
reach. So I think that's a positive aspect for it. I mean, years ago, before there was social media, you'd have to wait for something to come on the
Mm-hmm.
news or for it to come out
Mm-hmm.
in a newspaper or something like that. But with social media, you can find out something instantaneously. And there have been several things that I have found out that way. That number 86% is pretty high. I find that's a little
Yeah.
shocking to me. I didn't realize that that number was so high. And there have been a few
Mm-hmm.
things that's happened where I found out first on social media. I'd see it there, but then I always go and check another source because I don't always
Yeah.
trust everything I see on social media just because I see it there.
Yeah. And that statistic escalated, of course, during the pandemic. It was
Mm,
at 20%
wow.
in 2018 and at
Wow.
86% in 2021. That's a huge
Yeah.
yeah, escalation of statistics. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I agree with you that there has, obviously it's positive that, we can get this information, especially for first responders. They could actually, because people are always uh, taping and
Yeah.
videoing, they could actually see things going on in real time as they're getting to. I'm not sure that they actually do that, but I can imagine that they can see things in real time as
Yeah.
they're getting to the scene of crisis.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, so anybody else want to add?
I imagine that even as people are cutting the cord with cable nowadays, that would
Mm,
have increased the that statistic as well. A lot of us are streaming things, and so social media. It's unfortunate that you can come on to connect with others and then be kind of smacked out of nowhere with some of that news.
Mm-hmm.
Like Miss Valerie said, it is great that that the reach is so wide. And so when there are social justice things or tragedies, being a believer gives you opportunities to pray and support others. But
yes.
Yeah.
when it is something that's on the negative side, just that repeated viewing of it, whether you want to or not, it can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And another
I like.
positive aspect, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say another positive aspect is when there is a social issue, you can reach so many people quickly and help to gather people and rally people around a particular issue very, very quickly, and mobilize and address a certain issue by getting people together and putting out a call of action and having people gather. So I think that's another positive aspect of it also.
Yeah. And also not just, for what's going on here in America, but it also helps us to see what's going on even around our world, to, possibly humanitarian things that need to take place. And so, yeah, I agree. I just wanted to jump back to something Whitney said. This isn't necessarily a Christian show, but as a Christian, Whitney mentioned that when we see things, tragedies and crisis on social media, it is my hopes that the Christian would take that time to, to pray and, ask God to be with, those people or intervene in that situation. And it just brought me back to my grandfather. I used to hear these stories anyway about my grandfather who, if he saw an accident on the side of, someone in an accident on the road, he would always pull off and stop and pray for the people. And so I thought, wow, we don't have to actually physically be present to, to be able to offer a prayer for someone who may have gotten into, an accident or crisis or some sort of traumatic experience. So thanks, Whitney, for highlighting that. But we also do know that social media can be a big hindrance to, it can be a trigger, it could be a hindrance in the times of crisis. So let's talk about how social media actually hinders the progress, or it can be a hindrance in some kind of way in times of crisis.
The misinformation, I would say, Ms. Valerie mentioned that as well. You can't always trust the initial things that are coming out. Sometimes if it's the beginning of a story, we don't have all of the developments. So we may have people rallying around something that it wasn't necessarily the full story. So I think that can cause hindrances and difficulties as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And also the ways in which people respond when they read about something, that can be a huge hindrance, because then sometimes you'll have individuals just going at it and it becomes very antagonistic, even if it is something that may have started out positively, can quickly just go down that negative rabbit hole when you have people adding negativity to it and just insulting one another and just going back and forth and trying to one up each other and to just prove a point, rather than stick to whatever the initial subject matter was, especially if it was something positive. And you can get lost. The positivity can get completely lost, and you forget, well, what were they initially?
You don't even know what what it was about. You start reading the feed and you're like, well, what was the topic again? Because people had gone so far and gone so far left. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's where even we talked a couple of episodes prior about bullying, and it could easily get into that whole bullying where people start, saying things to people and being mean, on social media. It could also heighten fear.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I feel like a major hindrance is that a lot of things that are considered crisis wouldn't have been if they weren't blown up on social media. And then I feel like a lot of the world and people who consume social media are now experiencing crises they didn't have to, if it wasn't, drawn out or publicized to the extent and then, like you said, like going down these rabbit holes that are unnecessary. It starts creating issues that are not the issue, and now everybody's dealing with a million issues at once.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clear that social media can be a two-edged or double-edged sword. In that, of course, there's the positive aspects of it, but when we have this ongoing, never-ending information, negative information, it can be information overload, and it could lead to what we in our field call desensitization.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's when, so much information is released. And, well, let's talk about what desensitization is. It's an emotional numbing.
Yeah.
How else would you describe desensitization?
I would say becoming gradually less shocked by things or happenings that would have caused great shock initially. And the more you hear it over and over and over and over again, it's not so shocking anymore. And it doesn't have that same emotional impact and cause that same visceral response over time, because now it's like, okay, I'm hearing it again. Yeah, so what?
Yeah. I heard a great analogy. They said it's likened to when you try to boil a frog. So if you throw the frog in boiling water, the frog will immediately jump out. But if you start the frog in the water and slowly raise the temperature, the frog will get accustomed to the temperature and stay in the water and just boil. And I thought that was a really good analogy. So initially, content that we, would think like, wow, that's horrible, or wow, I can't believe that happened, or oh my God, that's so sad, that will have these, like you said, appropriate emotional reactions to. Eventually, your brain doesn't get an opportunity to process that this is an inappropriate, that my emotion should be have a reaction to this. And so the information just keeps coming, and then we become very emotionally numb, and it could happen to the best of us. Because I feel like, even personally, if I am not very careful, I can do the scroll thing and and see very negative things and go to the next. I think all of us can be guilty of that if we're not really intentional and conscious of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could potentially happen to any of us, especially if we are not intentional about either what we see or the amount of time that we spend on social media. Because it's very easy to sit there and just do the thumb thing, and you're just scrolling and you're just scrolling and you're just scrolling before you realize how much time has passed by, and then how much of the same thing are you seeing while you are scrolling. And I don't know, I wonder sometimes, is that intentional? I wonder about certain information that is disseminated and over and over and over and over again. I wonder if it is intentionally done so that people can become desensitized regarding specific subject matters.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Kiera speak to the algorithm. You and I, Valerie, we're not really social media
You can say that again, sis.
savvy as it relates to that, but surely Kiera can speak to what the algorithms do, and that's pretty much what you're saying. You're wondering if it's intentional.
So you do know what an algorithm is.
I mean, I know enough, but I don't really understand it like that.
I mean, an algorithm is just basically a formula that whatever platform team decides is important information to push or not. So you'll find a lot of people who are social media influencers. They'll talk about the algorithm. and every so often they will change the algorithm, right? So years ago, Instagram, in order for your content to be pushed more, you had to get a lot of likes. Now you have to have people saving your posts instead of liking. Now liking is at the bottom of most important for your information to get pushed. So they changed the algorithm, and decide what they're going to push or not. They also, on top of that, are doing a lot of censoring now. So they're deciding what can be said, what can't be said. Especially on TikTok, a lot of content creators, especially Black content creators, are complaining because they'll go to talk about racial injustice and things like that and be censored. Their videos will be deleted or hidden. So yeah, they definitely decide the messages that they would like to be, pushed. And people, are finding ways around this algorithm. They'll use different words or, use asterisks, whatever, to get around, because the algorithm is literally just a formula. It's not a person behind it. So you can find a different way around the formula to get your message.
Okay. So does that algorithm come into play when you see certain things that are quote unquote trending? Does the algorithm come into play with something like that?
Yeah, the algorithm is always at play. If you see something trending, it's because that platform decided that this is okay to be trending.
Okay.
Because of the way the algorithm works. So, people have learned to work with or against or around the algorithm to push their message. So if you ever see someone posting something and it's like encoded, but you know what they're saying, right? So, like on TikTok, you can't say the word sex. So people will type SEGGS.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're saying sex.
And they put what?
This is education for us.
Yeah.
So they will, retype words or, make it so it sounds like or looks like what we all know.
Okay.
And not use the word sex. It'll get taken down.
Oh.
So just a little.
I remember trying to post some things about God, and it was.
Yeah, they censor everything. Anything that can be viewed as abusive language, and the problem with that is that they're starting to censor things that are real things to be talked about.
Yeah. Well, I think it wasn't God. I think I couldn't mention Jesus. So we're trying to get around it by saying God, because universal. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But we have several people joining us on tonight. Maybe some of your friends, Valerie. We have Mamie joining.
Oh, that's my
Alicia
daughter-in-law.
Leroy. All right, Mamie, daughter-in-law. Thanks for joining on tonight. Alicia Leroy and Carolyn Little and Rakisha and Cheryl and Melina. Thank you so much for joining. You can jump in the conversation at any point. So I guess the question then is, like, when is enough enough? We do need to know what's going on, in the world. We need to know, even as Whitney said, just if for nothing else, to pray, and to, bring our heart to the situation, which I'm sure a lot of people don't. But when is enough enough?
Okay.
If I could say, just going back to the desensitization, I think that a combination of what all has been said, it is likely intentional, because when you think of our screens, not just with social media, but just the screen time in general, it went from video games, just the intense amount of time people would spend on that, in chat rooms and on games on our computers. I think all of that kind of leads to that desensitization, which it really is almost making us less human. It's that sensitivity that separates us in a lot of ways. And so to answer the question, like, when is enough enough? I think when we have conversations like this to highlight, hey, how are these things affecting you or your loved one? Paying attention even to how the children, the differences in socialization that we see going on there. But I think the conversation, highlighting these things on a regular basis.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I don't think we are meant to just consume and consume and consume and consume without ever stopping to consider how this information is impacting us and the ways in which we interact in our relationships. So I think that's a great point, Whitney, about having conversations. Okay, you saw this on social media, you heard this on social media, and it's again and again and again. So let's talk about this. How are you feeling about it? How does it impact? And you mentioned the word earlier, Dr. Danita, the word trigger. And there are some things we see that can be very triggering to us, on our history and our own personal narrative. And if we're careful, and if we don't take the time to stop and to reflect or to have conversations about it, we can find ourselves in a very, very unhealthy emotionally place.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that, like as we move towards the future, I also feel like it's gonna take a lot more than conversation, because the world is moving away from human interaction. Like the world is moving towards virtual everything. Everybody's going to work online, school online. We're socializing online, dating online, playing games online. Nobody is coming together anymore to play video games. Everybody's playing video games from their own home, and they just have a headset on and talk to each other. So I think it's going to take more than conversation, too. It's going to take, like, intentionality in getting around people and being around people versus doing everything online. I mean, they're moving into this whole like virtual reality thing, the little headset goggles. Y'all, one of my coworkers told me that you can buy land in the metaverse, in the metaverse, which is like
metaverse.
Digital real estate.
What, real estate? I mean, for real, or just imaginary real
like
estate?
You spending money?
You're spending.
You're spending money.
So, like, what's the value? Like, how do you get the?
Can you move in?
I don't know if it's
your
buying,
avatar.
I'm pretty sure it's buying like like land that represents real land, but can still be done in the metaverse. You don't have to go and talk to anybody. You talk within the metaverse. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the problem is that everything is moving towards digital representation.
Yeah.
Well, you say that it scares me too.
Yeah.
And when I think about, Kiara is saying that it's going to take more than conversations, I don't really think people want it to be any different. I don't think the majority, the masses, I don't think that they want it to be any different. So what kind of conversations are, or what kind of change is really going to be made when this is?
I don't know if it's a matter of want to or not. I think it's just people not being aware of a changing world, like something that's happening quickly. They're just going through the motions. So
I think people just like comfort too. I mean, nobody wants to be moved out of their comfort zone for anything, and this is just making life easy. I mean, I don't know if you can liken it to when our grandmother said we don't need a microwave, but we all wanted a microwave and we got the microwave, like who wants to take the time to heat the food in the oven or on the stovetop? So it just keeps progressing, and we all love this comfort. We all love this convenience. And so who's really going to get rid of convenience like that?
And we're going to end up like the movie WALL-E. Remember that movie?
I would say that conversation comes into play, can be helpful when we consider, like Kiara said, everything is going virtual. And so if we are not privy to how it works, how to be able to, I don't want to say manipulate, but maneuver through it, we can then fall to the wayside, because the children are being taught coding and how to build these apps and things. And so if we can push the conversation to that, say, hey, build these apps to create some type of emotional wellness within this virtual space, so that we remember we're still humans in this virtual space, because we can't afford it now. I think that those types of things could be helpful. You're right. Conversation alone is not going to do it, but if we're intentional and strategic in the types of conversations we're having, especially with the kids, because again, they're able to get it, grasp it faster than we ever could, and those before us.
Yeah. I think I absolutely agree with that. But again, it kind of frightens me. Just when Kiara said we're moving away from human interaction, and to me, that is such a great loss. I know social media says, oh, we'll bring people together and to connect people, but in a sense, it's causing us to be more disconnected in many ways. And to me, that's scary. And when you speak, Whitney, about being intentional with the children, I have 4 grandchildren, and my oldest one, Sanaya, she's 6. And sometimes when we're spending time together, I have to tell her, look, baby, you got to put down the tablet, put down the phone, and, let's read a book. Let's sit down and, let's talk. Let's do something other than have a screen in front of your face. But she's gotten so accustomed to that. So I have to make very, very sure that every time they come over, we sit down and we read, or we talk, or we play, or we do something that does not involve having that screen, because social media to me is a necessary evil. I know we cannot avoid it. It's here. It's not going anywhere. And as someone who is, in my generation, I'm 65 years old, I'm now having to retrain my
you looking all good for 65. I ain't want to
and learn how to navigate all this social media. And I got to tell you, it's very frustrating to me at times. But like Kiara said, it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah. You touched upon something earlier, talking about how the importance of us assessing where we are, in our personal use. And that's another thing that is going to come down to, like, people are going to just really need to assess their own use of it, and monitor and adjust accordingly. But as we're talking about, our own personal use, all of us here are have been affected. We're all African American. We are mental health professionals. Valerie, you were also a healthcare professional. You were a nurse during the pandemic. A lot that we saw with all of the racial unrest, your students, school shootings, all of that. Let's talk about what we have experienced in our viewing of social media, how it has impacted us, even as professionals, how we've been impacted.
Well, go ahead, Whitney. Go ahead, Whitney.
For me, I would say that for a long time, it caused me to retreat from the use of social media. If I felt myself being triggered by something, which was often during 2020 and right prior to that, just like you mentioned, a lot of the racial injustices. It was a time where, interestingly enough, I was watching the news a lot. So to get it from the television and then be getting it from when I'm just trying to connect and see maybe what the kids were wearing for Halloween, or just something, trying to look for something positive on social media, being reminded by those things, it caused me to retreat, I would say. And I had to really look at how much time I was spending and how it was affecting me. And then not allow that to trickle into my relationships and regular human interaction. I think that it can very easily, you can fall into that comfort zone and just say, well, I won't deal with it. And that's not healthy at all. But just a personal reflection.
Yeah. I would say I kind of have a similar experience and reaction, because when I see certain things, and especially when I see anything that is related to race, having been personally impacted by very, very overt racism on many occasions, that triggers something in me, and I feel myself getting angry. And I say to my husband sometimes, I don't want to feel this anger, but I'm feeling it and I don't know what to do with it. I know what I want to do with it, but I don't want to go to jail. So I have to tell myself, okay, Val, stop looking at it so much. And I'll sit down and I'll talk to my husband about it to try to have some of that anger to dissipate, because I do have a response to it. And other things such as these things they have now with the reels and whatnot. Sometimes I'll scroll through some of them, and it's almost as I could feel myself losing brain cells while I'm looking at it. I have to say, now, shut it down. Shut it down. So I talk to myself and tell myself when enough is enough, when it's too much, and when I need to stop.
Yeah. I think for me, you want to go first?
I think I just decided that I have a boundary of what I will view and not view. There's a ton of things on the internet. Like, I mean, you can watch people dying on the internet, and so I often will just decide that I'm not going to watch certain things.
Yeah.
I still very much have my shock value in seeing people I've heard, or I just, it's not something that I find entertaining enough to watch.
Yeah. I think for me, and I mentioned this, I think I mentioned this to you, Valerie, or to our team back in 2020 when all was going on with the pandemic and George Floyd and all of that. I realized for the first time, as we all, are experiencing this, all of us as helpers, we're all experiencing what's going on. And I realized for the first time as a supervisor that my team was wounded from all that they were experiencing in, in social media and the realities of what was going on in life. And we are the ones that were called to be the helpers and bring emotional healing to people. And we were at that time very emotionally broken.
Yes.
And so I knew that we needed to go into helping to heal each other. And that's when we made that decision to do the racial healing curriculum that we did as a team.
Yeah.
But I began to think that, of course, we knew to do that. We knew that it was affecting us. But how many people don't know how much they are being impacted, how much they're being, emotionally overwhelmed because they just don't, it becomes a part of their norm, a part of their everyday, and how many children are being affected because parents are glued to it. And then their children are, right in earshot, or 8-year-olds have phones now, and it's not even monitored the way that it should be. And so if we as adults are so negatively impacted and emotionally overwhelmed by what we see, imagine what's happening with our babies.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. What we did, I found it to be extremely, extremely helpful because it gave us a safe space for us to unload and to talk about the things that we were feeling and all the emotions that we're going through. And just as you said, how many other people are doing that? Not everyone is blessed to be part of a community where something like that can take place. So we were very fortunate in that. Yeah.
And Valerie, I can't remember if you retired prior to the pandemic, or whether you were still in nursing during the pandemic, and
Yeah, I was still in
wonder if
nursing. Yeah, I was still in
wonder if you
nursing.
can
I was
touch
still in
upon
nursing.
that,
Oh yeah,
and
and it just so
how much
happened. I'm sorry.
I
Go
was going
ahead.
to say, if you could touch upon like how much, was going on in terms of the verbiage about COVID and on social media while you all were experiencing, what you were experiencing as
Yeah,
helpers. You had some people, this is not really, this is fake, and, and then
yeah,
the healthcare professionals are watching people die all day long. So if you want to
yeah.
speak to that.
That was difficult because I had people, members of my own family, saying COVID wasn't real. The numbers are being inflated. All these people aren't dying. Um, but to be a healthcare professional there and witnessing all of
Hmm.
that, it's something else entirely. And I'm saying to myself, why? Where are the people coming from with this information, thinking that COVID is not real, or that people aren't really dying, and people are hospitals are inflating numbers? No, these people are really, really dying, and
Right.
it was scary for us because every other day things were changing. We were getting different information, and the ways in which we protected ourselves last week, now this week is different.
Hmm.
We had masks that we never in the past would reuse. Now we're being told it's okay to reuse them. So we were getting a lot of different information, and it
Mm.
was unnerving. It was very, very
Mm.
unnerving. And I was a manager at the time, and I had nursing staff looking at me, and I didn't have any more information than they did. We were
Yeah.
all in this together, finding out things together because, and I think that there is still a great deal that is unknown about this virus. We're still learning things about it.
Right.
Protocols and policies were changing, and it frightened us because if the policy is different now as opposed to last week, how protected were we last week? How protected will we
Right.
be
Right.
next week? So
Yeah.
it was very, very unnerving. And then when I heard people say, "Oh, it's not real," I would want to tell them, "Okay, you come to the hospital, you go on a COVID unit, and you watch
Hmm.
people die, and see how much
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's not real."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would
Yeah.
even
I
So
mean,
say,
there was so many narratives on social media, and you didn't know who, even people that you would think that you should get information, that this is a reputable Dr. Fauci, this
right.
Donald Trump, or wherever we were getting information from. It was just all this conflicting and contradicting, and it was a lot.
It was a lot. And
It was a
during that
lot.
time, not only did I avoid stuff about COVID on social media, I never posted anything about it because I just didn't want to get drawn into anything. There were so many times I wanted to unleash.
Yeah.
I really wanted to unleash from my own experience, but I said, no, I'm not going to do that because then it could turn into something ugly. But there was a whole lot of stuff being posted and shared about COVID, and so much of
Yeah.
it was erroneous. And the thing that's frightening is that so many people believe if it's said on Facebook, then it must be real. No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Anxiety, fear. I mean, it was heightening. It was going through the roof.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially if you lost someone. You
Hmm.
mentioned triggers. And so even today, like for those who lost family members, I imagine to hear someone say it's like anger, rage,
Hmm.
I'm sure would
Yes.
ensue wherever they may find that conversation. So
Yeah.
I understand why you would stay away from those conversations, certainly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a scary time. And then we even had nurses who just refused to come to work. Some just wouldn't even come to work because
Yeah.
they were afraid. But somebody had to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
And going back to the racial injustices and how how quickly things can go viral. And yes, we need to see the information. But then all of the comments that go along with it, and the mean things that are said about the people being abused. And Whitney experienced a family member. She just told us about it yesterday, and it's already viral. A family member that was abused by police officers in a mall right here in New Jersey. You want to share?
Sure. Sure. My cousin's son, he's 14, was actually it was a quite courageous act in that he was defending a friend of his who was younger. So these are 7th and 8th graders. And there was a high schooler who was bullying the younger student in the mall. And so my cousin was standing up to him like, hey, and the high schooler was much bigger. Was in his space, and an altercation ensued. The police responded within like 20 seconds, the other student he's actually Latino, but he appeared to be Caucasian. And so when the police arrived, the male officer, pulled the bigger kid off of my cousin, and then put my cousin in handcuffs. And the other student was then sat down on the couch by the female officer, who then kind of looked at him like, are you okay? And the kid points. And then she then helps the male officer, who already had the young man apprehended and in cuffs, helps to hold him down by putting her knee on his neck. And so very triggering in that even though his life was not, even though it wasn't a life-threatening thing, just those images. And I think that's the danger with social media, what we're discussing tonight. It's thank God that the outcome wasn't tragic. However, the emotional effects that a 14-year-old had to go through for having a courageous act of standing up for someone. So it did go viral. They've been on several news stations since then, because that the female officer, it was just a clear, it was just clearly racial bias.
Absolutely.
And so that was recent. And I find that these, the topics that we're highlighting, it's unfortunate that something would come so close to home, but I am confident that they have the strength and wherewithal to handle, the attention that comes with it, because now there's support, but who knows what might happen in a week or two. Once you step into those limelights, all types of information and attention can come with that. So so we're praying for the young man.
Wow. Thank God.
So when we so when we think about that and we view that, immediately what comes to your mind?
George
Floyd. She has her knee on his neck. So immediately George Floyd comes to mind. And then you get reflooded, right? With those thoughts. And so people don't really comprehend what trauma really is. They think that they have to actually be in I think people think they have to actually have experienced
it themselves,
an incident for themselves to be traumatized. But if you immediately get the triggers and you start to feel something in your body, you feel something in your stomach, or your heart palpitates a little bit, clearly you have secondhand trauma. Or vicarious trauma. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I don't know that people really understand how they can experience trauma not having been in the actual situation. And we also I'm not sure if there are questions being asked, because last week I wasn't able to tell. So if anybody sees any questions in the feed, let me know, or any comments. But let's talk about secondhand trauma.
I think we witnessed it during the trial of the officer that murdered George Floyd, when we saw people who were testifying who witnessed the murder, and the ways in which they were so impacted by it. You could see it during their testimony. They were severely traumatized. They were right there. And not only did they witness it, but they wanted to do something, but they were helpless.
Helpless, yeah.
So yeah, that secondhand trauma, that vicarious trauma is real. We don't have to have something happen to our own person. We can witness it. We can hear a story about it. Even with us as counselors, sometimes when we have our clients share some of their traumatic stories with us,
Yeah,
or
I see Angel.
yeah.
She shared that as a therapist, she experiences vicarious trauma, and it's very, very easy to,
Oh yeah.
which is why after being in the moment with our clients, we have to take a moment to, debrief, digress,
Yeah.
breathe, and make sure that we are good and that we are our emotions are safe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That is so
yeah.
true, because I know when I have a client who has been the victim of sexual trauma, and after she has shared her sexual trauma, having been sexual survivor myself, there are times when, after having heard that, all I can do is just go and lay down.
Yeah.
That's all I can do, because it's like I am there with her, but I'm also taken back to my own experience. So
And we
yeah.
all have triggers. We all have triggers of our own experiences. Obviously, as professionals, we are, trained to appropriately exercise self-care and deal with that. But
Yeah.
not everybody is able to deal with that. And so when those triggers come based on some things that could be viewed on social media, people don't know what to do with what they're experiencing inside.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
that you mentioned that vicarious trauma, because that was something, and you highlighted those symptoms, what that could feel like, the something in your stomach, or,
Yes.
I think it's important that we lay those things out, because you're absolutely right. Many probably don't recognize that those things are even happening, or as a result of what they're viewing. And just would like to say thank you to you both, Ms. Valerie, for your service as a nurse, during the pandemic, risking your life every day to be that supervisor, that leadership for your staff, and as a counselor as well, and to you, Dr. Danita, because your service is helping so many, and I think that you're considered frontline professionals as well,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's needed. This emotional piece is not given the flowers that it deserves. But in the midst of that trauma and chaos and tragedy, you are the ones that the people run to. So thank you for these things.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was something else that I was going to add to the secondhand trauma. And Whitney, you were saying that I was sharing some of the symptoms. Another symptom that people don't recognize is hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
when you are viewing negativity, doom scrolling, yeah, when you're doom scrolling over and over and over again, and all you see is negativity and all you see is doom, and what you're seeing in violence and people being killed, or people, whatever the violence is that you're seeing,
Yeah.
you can become very hyper vigilant to that, where if something sounds like, smells like, looks like what you saw, you're going to have some of those same like startled reactions
Yes.
to what you see. And sometimes it's inappropriate startling, because you're really
Mhm.
not in a situation, in that situation, but because you've been so exposed, your behavior then becomes as if you are living out some sort of traumatic event. And so the untrained person doesn't really recognize that. But I've experienced people with hypervigilance, and I've seen reactions of people that don't align with the situation, but because
Yeah.
they had experienced either, secondhand trauma watching, or even, been in some sort of traumatic event, but nonetheless, it could happen just by ongoing doom scrolling and ongoing viewing of
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah.
And so people have to really be careful of that. I wanted to talk also about the fight, flight, or freeze responses that come along with people experiencing trauma, just to provide some education so that people understand exactly, what's going on in their emotional selves, and how they can head this off if they didn't put themselves in this position.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I just want to share some of these things that are real, so that people, may make the decision to begin to exercise some boundaries with how much they doom scroll.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about, go ahead, Whitney.
I was just going to say what came to mind is when the saints of old didn't allow people to go to the movies. It was like maybe there was something to that. Maybe they understood that opening yourself up to someone you don't know the results or reactions it could cause in you.
Something
Maybe
was going to
not.
get up in your spirit and deep down in your soul, right?
Oh, I know. Yeah. But, I wanted to also address the hypervigilance you were speaking about, because sometimes I have to work at not being hypervigilant when it comes to my sons, because when I'm scrolling and I see all the things happening to Black men, I'm the mother of 2 Black men, and sometimes I worry about them, especially my oldest boy, because he smokes weed. His car smells just like weed, and I'm always worried if he ever gets pulled over, what may happen. And he's like, "Oh, Ma, don't worry," but I can't help it. And it's not that I'm worried, I'm more concerned. And I can recall having had the conversation with them when they were teenagers. That conversation where you talk about, if you ever have an encounter with the police, this is how you conduct yourself, because I want you to come home alive. Years ago, because my boys are 37 and 38 now, but when they were teenagers, I had the conversation with them back then. And, but my concern didn't end back then. I still have that concern because they still are Black men in America. So
and now it's heightened by
now
all
even
that
heightened.
we see. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that this conversation was so good. I didn't realize that we had already come to our 8:30 time. I cannot believe the time went so quickly.
Wow.
But so just to talk a little bit about some things that people can consider in light of the fact that, as Kiara talked about, the algorithms, and I don't think she touched upon the fact that when you choose to watch a certain
Yeah, so when the other part of the algorithm is that it also caters to your own personal desires. So if you watch a certain video, they will put a certain video on your explore page, and so on. This is especially specific to TikTok, because the whole main page is called For You, like your For You page. And so the more videos you like, they start, looking for content that's similar to that, and then they'll put that content on your For You page. And so on. So you can tailor it to.
She said there's no sound. Is somebody else having problem with the sound? Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Go ahead.
So you can tailor your Instagram feed to look how you want. You can mute people, you can block people, you can mute certain, types of content. You can actually go into your settings and decide which words and type of things would come up on your feed.
Wow. Well, that explains a lot, because I was wondering how these people, because there was something I could order a particular something, right?
And then you get
Facebook, and every other ad is about this
Yes.
company. And I'm saying, how the heck they know
You
I
can turn
ordered
that
this?
off too. That's called data sharing, and you agreed at some point
Yes.
in your phone or your computer to data share, so your apps are sharing data with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay,
That's how they
okay.
make their money too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Selling that
The
information.
goal is just that you would look at ad after ad after ad.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to be on social media, then it's best for you to set the stage of what you're going to be viewing. And so
Yeah,
you can do that by liking or viewing those positive things or educational things, whatever it is
yeah,
that you want to use social media for in a positive way. And
yeah,
then you'll keep getting that content. And so it's not, I don't know that it's necessary. I think people just are gravitating to negative content, and that's why that gets it gets up on the top of the feed. But
yeah.
you can reconfigure your own
Mm,
feed if you want to. And
yeah.
so that would be one of my suggestions: reconfigure your feed by what you choose to look at.
Look
And
at.
so I absolutely never get those. Somebody has to tell me about the happenings, the shootings, the things. I
Yeah,
don't really
I
get
don't get them
those
either. Yeah,
on my feed because I don't watch
mhm,
those.
yeah,
I didn't start with watching it, and so that's not
yeah.
what pops up on my feed. And so
Mhm.
we know that this constant viewing is going to definitely cause us to experience some secondhand trauma, and secondhand trauma will lead to hypervigilance, will lead to um, uh, anxiety, it will lead to people being less empathetic. And so we don't want to
Yes.
put ourselves in this position. And so we don't want
Mhm.
to put ourselves in a position of living out doom and gloom. And so
Right.
we have to take charge um, over our own content. We have to take charge over our own emotions. The question is, who's going to be willing to do it? Are you going to be willing to pull back? Are you going to be willing to have boundaries on what you are going to watch? Are you going to
Mm.
be willing to take the breaks and not allow social media to be what you go to because you're bored? We used to send kids outside to play
Yes.
when they were bored. Now kids get on social media because they're bored. And so
Mhm, mhm.
getting back to, activities and the things that you enjoy doing and hobbies and things like that, that will get you moving. Social media does not, it doesn't get you moving, not unless you're going to use it for exercise or something like that. But just having that discipline, people are so undisciplined these days. And
Mm.
so getting back to, just making a conscious decision
Yeah.
every single day how you're going to govern your life and not allowing social media to govern your life for you.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are my tips for this evening. And if any of you have anything else you want to add, you can, just jump in before we end our show.
I would just reiterate what you said, and for each person to take responsibility for what we are consuming on social media, and just
Mm-hmm.
to be intentional about what we're watching, what we are listening to, what we're sharing. Because
Yeah.
I'm also very, very. I don't share just any old thing. Be careful about what we are sharing, and if we want to have more positive content, then we should be more positive ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like Kiara said, it's not going anywhere. It's the social media thing. It's here to stay. And I would also encourage someone like myself to try to get someone like Kiara to help a sister out in terms of reconfiguring the social media and setting up those boundaries in such a way that I get more positivity and
Mm.
eliminate or block some of the negative things.
Yeah. And those are positive things that young adults can do for some of us seniors.
Yes.
Um, just helping us out in that area. Do you think that discipline will be the portion of the young generation?
Probably not in the way that you guys know.
Define discipline.
Yeah, define discipline. I think that, I mean, the younger generation is disciplined in things that maybe aren't fruitful, but I don't know. I think that just depends on the person. Obviously, our generation is a lot less. The work ethic is hardly there, and we want everything immediately because that's you know, that's how we grew up, having everything immediate
at your disposal. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it just depends on where the world is headed. Like if everything is moving towards immediate, who needs discipline?
Lord Jesus.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a hard thing to grasp. You know, it's a hard concept to grasp, but the truth of the matter is the reason why the discipline is lacking is because of the way the world is now.
Yeah.
It didn't just happen, you know. Kids didn't just decide I'm not gonna be disciplined. It's the world that has been given to them.
Yeah. That's true. That's very, very true. And I always say some of that we as the older generation have to take some responsibility for.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah, we have to take responsibility for that, because how disciplined were we? How intentional were we? And what were we modeling?
Right.
So, but even with young people, I think this younger generation, as in every generation before it, there's always going to be pockets here and there of individuals who are disciplined and who are not just going with the flow and following the crowd, but will be thinkers and
trailblazers.
Yes, and trailblazers. Absolutely. It exists in every generation, because you know, when I was young, the generation before me was saying the same thing that I might say about the younger generation now, but there's always pockets, because if not, there's no progress. So there's always going to be those individuals out there, regardless. That's what I believe.
Yeah. All right.
I would absolutely agree with that, and just say, as we're on the topic of this younger generation, to just continue to encourage this for those watching. I think we all have young people in our lives. Let's continue to monitor the content that they're consuming while you're able to, because once they get into that adolescent range, it becomes more difficult. Also, I would just encourage as well, to those trailblazers, continue to do what you're doing. We talk about discipline, you know, athletes, those who they may spend a lot of time on those tablets, but when it comes to athletics and on these teams,
do what they need to do.
They do. And so even with certain students, so I would say, let's rally around those that we see modeling that behavior. And for for our young people who are not, let's get them around those kids. And also with the virtual space, I would just highlight again, these virtual spaces. Let's encourage the children to learn how to code and build these apps for us, and create that future that we want to see, that we can all participate in. There's a time where you mentioned the tablets being the babysitter. My generation, the TV was the babysitter for those latchkey kids. So we see how things are progressing. Let's continue to reel it in while we can.
Absolutely.
There's still hope.
Yeah. All right. I like that. There's still hope.
There's
always
hope.
Thank you so much, ladies. This is our final episode for season 4. And I think this was an amazing topic for our final episode. This is my lane. This is what I do, providing this information. I want you to share, Valerie, your lane. I'm just so excited about when people bring their passions to social media for the benefit of the people. So share what you do as well, Valerie.
Well, I have a passion for helping married couples. So I have something that is called Marriage Beyond the Breach. That really was born out of all of the difficulties and challenges that my husband and I faced over the last 41, 42 years. So we do a live broadcast on Sundays. In fact, Dr. Danita is going to be on in a couple of weeks. So we do live broadcasts on Sundays at 7 p.m. And, sometimes I'll do short videos surrounding the topic of marriage and marital issues and how to overcome some of those things. So it's entitled Marriage Beyond the Breach. And it's something that was on my heart a long time before I started it, because I am very, very, very passionate about that. And my number one motto is that I believe that no marriage is beyond redemption. When people are willing to do the work and to really commit to each other and to the process.
All right. And you hear the passion that Valerie is presenting with. And so you know that the show is, the broadcast is really, really good just by hearing your heart. And so I catch the replays. I always remember to type in replay, which is bad because I want people to remember to type in replay when they watch mine. So I'm going to do better. But if you have your opportunity, if you're free on Sundays, definitely look for Valerie's Marriage Beyond the Breach broadcast. And if you missed the episodes from season 1, 2, 3, and some of the shows from this season 4, you can go to my Dr. Danita Thompson YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe while you are there. Hit the notification bell so that when we come back, you will be notified when season 5 begins. We're going to take a little bit of a break. There's some things going on here at Mending Hearts, some growth opportunities that we have been afforded. And so we're going to take a little bit of a break, but we will be back. Thank you so much for joining. Again, go ahead to the Dr. Danita Thompson YouTube channel and subscribe and watch the replays and let us know that you're catching the replays. Thank you, ladies. And we'll see you again next season, season 5.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Danita. Whitney,
all right.
Tiara, and I'll see you next Tuesday, Dr. Danita.
All righty.